Welcome to the Brothers Banter podcast. My name is Brian, and this is my little brother, tiny brother, Donnie.
Yeah, even though I'm years older than you, but it's all
Yeah.
good. So today we have the privilege of retired colonel from the United States Marine Corps, Jeff Holder. Jeff, man, it's great to have you here, man. We've been buds for a couple of years now since I've moved to Brunswick, and we when I found out that you're a retired colonel, man, let me tell you something. I was, in the wrestling business they call it marking out. Like I was fanboying about that. I came home and was telling Wendy, man, I can't believe that. Man, that is awesome. So we're glad to have you here, and we are. It is a legit privilege because one, we appreciate the service to our country, and two, I appreciate your friendship and your guidance and your mentorship in our walk with Christ as well. So I tell Brian about that all the time.
Yes, we are glad to have you on, Jeff.
Can
Fellas,
you hear
it's
us,
an
Jeff?
honor to be here. Yeah, I can hear you. I'm sorry about the Wi-Fi here. It's probably on my end. I've
You're all
got
good,
the
man.
wife and
We
the
can go ahead.
mother-in-law probably watch on the internet too with the watching Netflix or something. That's probably why the thing's not coming through real well for you.
Yeah, it happens, man. We get it. So we're going to kind of dive into some questions and stuff because we're going to probably wait a little bit, let some people start coming in. But we, Brian and I've been talking about this, off and on for I guess about 2 weeks now. And of course, we had you scheduled for I think it was last week, and then of course we had to work late, and it was sometimes, man, our job just kind of gets in the way a little bit, of doing this. But hey, that's what pays the bills, right?
That's right.
So, but we do have we got some people coming in. There is there's all right. So Jeff Kay Seward, that's my mom. Um, she's an amazing lady, and she loves our country and loves our military as well. Hey, mom. But so I guess we'll dive right into it, and I guess the basic question I've got is, what inspired you, Jeff, to join the Marines, and was it specifically you wanted to join the Marines, or how'd that work out?
Well, it's a little comical to talk about here. Here's why. When I was in college, I was at West Georgia College for part of the last portion of my time in school, and I'd been looking at what are my career choices that I want to do. I'd always wanted to be a pilot and fly because from early childhood, my father and mother used to take us to the airport, watching airplanes take off and land. And it was at the Charlie Brown Airport just outside of Atlanta. It's where we live near, and I had the bug all my life. I grew up uh, putting models together of aircraft and jets and everything I could think of. I mean, the landing on the moon was 1969. I was just 12 years old at that time, and every kid I knew wanted to be an astronaut. So getting my feet off the ground was probably a constant throughout my childhood. And back to where I was in college, I was looking at what I wanted to do, and I started investigating. I started reading. First book I ever read about military aviation was Baa Black Sheep, about the VMF 214. They used to have a TV show back in the 80s, I think, 70s and
remember it.
80s, the Corsair. And I'm still in love with that aircraft. I would love to get a chance to fly that one day. But anyway, I kept that in the back of my mind, and just kept on with my studies, not really pursuing anything. Then I decided to go and this is when Diane and I were dating as well. I decided to go to the Air Force recruiting office. Actually, it was over at the Lockheed plant. They had all the branches of uh, the armed forces there, and I wanted to go by the Air Force. Well, I came up to the door, and it was locked. And I said, "Oh, well, I guess I'm not going to be able to talk to the Air Force today." So I looked next door, and there's the Marine Corps, and I said, "Well, they've got aircraft, so I'll go check them out." I'm sitting here fat, dumb, and happy. I don't know what I'm looking at. I don't know what in the world's coming at, but I knew about marine aviation. I knew they had aircraft. So I went and talked in there, and of course, I remember the vividly. Captain King, I can still remember his name. This is 1979, and he took me under his wing right away and got me started. And back in those days as well, the Marine Corps offered flying lessons for potential aviators for free. You didn't have to pay for anything. So here I'm at.
Wow.
I get on that program, go to Peachtree DeKalb Airport and start flying in an aircraft. Never even touched the controls of anything. It's all been in the mind since I was a kid. And this way, um, in that following summer, I was off to OCS, and that's where the journey began from that point. I was on what they called an air contract. I was guaranteed a shot of going to Pensacola to get into flight school. But that was the guarantee. That was as far as the guarantee went. They said if you failed out, you get to go be an infantryman or whatever else the Marine Corps wants you to do at the time. You're going to
Right.
serve
Right.
for 4 years. But the OCS thing was like we discussed earlier, was that 10-week program at Quantico in the middle of the summer. Back in those days, they didn't have air conditioned barracks back then. We were right on the next to the Potomac River, nice and hot.
Sounds like it.
That's where all
So
the aviation started from.
okay. Now, what did you fly back? Did you fly helicopters back then or planes?
First thing, the Navy, Marine Corps, and the Coast Guard, they all go through the same program. Well, actually, the Air Force does too. They've since consolidated a lot of the primary training, all of the branches, so you can go anywhere to get it. But back in those days, you started out in a fixed wing aircraft. All pilots did, and
Oh,
based on your grades and what you or your preferences and or combination of both, and the needs of the service, that determined which way you were going to go. And in those days for the Marine Corps, you had jets, helicopters, or the fixed wing, or multi-engine fixed wing, which would have been a C-130 pathway. Um, my grades weren't high enough to get the jets like I wanted. Of course, everybody wanted jets in those days. It was the F-18 was just about to come out, and so everybody was vying for a chance to get in that brand new aircraft. But it was quite all right. Once the primary was done, you transfer over to a different squadron where they train you in the helicopters. You start out in the Bell Jet Rangers, what we had to start out with. Just a few years prior, they were still flying old Vietnam Hueys for primary training. Um, and once you complete there, then you go to your tactical training squadron, which is out in California for the Cobras, which I chose. I was adamant. I even had AH-1 Cobra painted on my helmet. I was so adamant about getting that particular aircraft. And it was a pretty bold move. I think now that I look back on it, but I finished second in my class, so I was able to pick what I wanted to fly and where I wanted to go. So it turned out pretty good. And so we went
wow.
out to California. We went to California after that. Camp Pendleton is just north of San Diego, and we did. I think I was out there for about 4 months for training in the Cobra, and then went back to the East Coast to um, New River, which is right next door to Camp Lejeune, and that's where my first tactical squadron was there at New River.
All right.
So when,
Brian, you have a question?
yeah, I got a question. So when you first got into it, before they put you in, I'm sure you had classwork or classroom type stuff where you had to do FAA type stuff. What kind of lead time was that before you actually got your hands into a fixed wing?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, you start out all ground school classes, and it's usually I think it's about 6 weeks worth of it of ground school, and I mean you're taking tests every week. That consists of navigation, aerodynamics, engineering structures, and a few other things, FAA rules and things like that that you'd have to study for and take tests on. The hardest one for me initially was aerodynamics. I mean, it's not an easy subject matter. Didn't do too well in that, but once I got the light bulb came on, it was like, oh, I get this. It's not that hard. And I eventually became an instructor in it in one of my classes that I taught later on in my career. So it was just, but you do go about 6 weeks of ground school before you actually go to what they call North Whiting Field. It's just probably about 45 minutes north of Pensacola is where the primary flight training takes place, as well as the helicopter flight primary flight training takes place. They're two separate fields up there.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
pretty
So
awesome.
so
That's,
I got another question, Tony. I just want to interrupt
yeah.
you. So
All right, go ahead, bud.
so so um you started the fixed wing, and then I know you eventually got into the helicopter. Which one did you find more challenging to fly? Is there one a little bit more challenging than the other, or
I'll put it. I'll tell you just like I tell everybody else. A helicopter, once you get it airborne in the sky, it pretty much flies just like an airplane. It's just a little bit slower.
okay?
The hardest thing you've got to learn how to do in a helicopter is hover, and that was a. You should have seen me the first time they take you out to do that exercise. The instructors, you fly out there with yourself, the instructor, and two other students are in the back, and when you go to these outlying fields and you're out there for about almost 2.5 hours. Um, and each guy gets a chance to fly for about 45 minutes, give or take. Well, the first day when you go out there, you learn what they call course rules, in a way to get in and out of the fields, and that's tested material. You're learning about how to control the helicopter. Well, the first thing you got to learn how to control is in a hover. So they have these 50 by 50 boxes painted on the cement, old cement runways. These are probably World War II runways that were practice fields back in those days. And the instructor gets you right in the middle of the box. He goes, okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to pull the aircraft into a hover, and I'm going to hand you each one of the controls one at a time, and then you're gonna attempt to maintain a stable hover. That's your ultimate goal. I'm just sitting there, yes, sir, okay.
Mm.
So he pulls the helicopter up into a hover, nice and stable. It's beautiful, uh, no wind day, and he goes, okay. What I want you to do first is take the cyclic. Okay, what that is, that's the stick that's in between your legs. Okay, that you've seen multiple times. That's called a cyclic in a helicopter. Well, I take control of that, and immediately the aircraft starts drifting right, drifting backwards, left, right. And the tendency for all new students is to over control the inputs with a helicopter. You have to learn that there's something called uh, there's an aerodynamic force that takes place, and when you put in an input, it's not instantaneous. It takes about a half a second before the reaction of the rotor system starts affecting the aircraft. Well, by the time you put the input in and you take it out, it's already moving right or left. So you control to go back to the left, double the distance, and it starts just bouncing all. I mean, you should see me. It was all I could do. I don't think I stayed in the 50-foot box, just with one control. And he was on the pedals, and the other device, which is called a collective, it's down beside, is your power lever, and he was holding those two. Uh, I couldn't see him. I didn't know what he was doing. I'm sure he was probably laughing to himself, saying, "Here we go again, another one." And so he says, "Okay." And as I started to gather, he said, "Quit squeezing the stick so hard. Just hold it with. Here's how you do this. Just think about moving, and the aircraft will move." Well, I didn't know what he was
Mm.
talking about, but he said another thing was take your fingers, instead of gripping the thing with your full fist, grab it with your thumb and your two fingers. He said that's all the control forces that you really need. And when I did that, it started stabilizing a little bit. He said, don't put once you put an input in, leave it for a second until you see what the aircraft's going to do, and it's minor changes. Just think about the movements. Well, after about 15 minutes of doing that, I started staying within probably 25 by 25, I guess.
Nice.
And so you continue with that. Well, this then he moves. Okay, I'm going to give you the pedals this time, which controls the direction of the aircraft nose. Okay, it's the tail rotor basically in the back. What that does is change pitch on those rotors, and it's an anti-torque device. If you looked at a helicopter and you see the way the rotors are spinning, that tail rotor's back there to keep it from spinning wildly and out of control. That's what it's for, especially in a hover. Anyway, those pedals is what he gave me, and so we started all over again. So now my brain's having to think, okay, stay within the box, slight movements, and now my feet are going right and left, full force, back and forth. So that helicopter, it probably looked like it was about to go into a Hollywood crash, from the outside looking in. But it took, and then the third control he gave me too. It was massive panic and terror in my brain that was going on because I didn't know what I was doing really. It just has to come naturally over time. Well, to be make a long story short, it took me 3 days before I was actually able to hover that thing in a pretty stable hover, and that's how long it just took me. And that was the hardest thing of flying that I ever did because the rest of it, like I said before, it flew like an airplane. An airplane's easy to take off, it's not easy to land, but especially if you don't understand aerodynamics and power control. But it was a much easier platform to take care of. But the helicopter, if you don't know how to hover, you'll never be able to fly one.
Okay. Donnie, can I ask one more thing? Because it is
Go
related.
ahead, brother. Yeah,
Just one more
go
thing.
ahead.
So, because
Yeah.
I find all this fascinating. So,
Oh, so
my
do I.
question,
Trust me.
yeah. So,
I
my
got it.
question is, I know probably back then when you started, they didn't have, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but they probably didn't have simulators. So, it's a two-part question. Did they have simulators back then, and do they use simulators now for preparing pilots?
Back then, they didn't have full motion simulators for us. Back then, they were a little small, and they were mainly for instrument training, instrument and navigation training. We didn't have the full motion simulators that you see out there nowadays. So everything that we did was in the aircraft, and you learn seat of the pants flying. To me, it was a lot easier. Uh, Today, I would say more than half of their training is done in simulators,
Okay.
full motion simulators with a full screen out in front of you. And they say, to me, flying a simulator after being in a few of them, they don't fly like the aircraft. It's a false sensation that they try and build into it. But these kids nowadays are raised up in it, and most of them are coming in playing video games all their life um, before they get there. So it's kind of intuitive for them to pick it up. For us old guys like me, I simulators still make me sick.
Yeah.
I, I recently tried to apply for one of the medevac jobs and got out there to Colorado, Denver, Colorado, and just couldn't get through the simulators. It was making me deathly sick. So I wasn't
Oh,
able to
wow.
pursue that because that's what they do now. They do all their main training in the simulators.
Wow.
Good gracious. Wow.
Okay, Donnie, you go
So
ahead.
if you have another one, go ahead, man. And seriously, because all of this to me is absolutely uh, it's all. I love it all. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And but yeah, Mark, I agree, man. Mark is one of my customers. Jeff, he's a good guy, and he's right. Nothing is like hands-on training. You know,
Yeah.
I believe that with everything. Um, so obviously being a colonel, um, you were that's a major leadership role. You know, so how did your military experience shape your leadership style?
Well, I'll tell you, it's not something that you develop, or it's not something you're born with. You pick up, and I was taught early on, especially from the senior enlisted personnel for they were very good individuals to talk to concerning how they thought officers should be and what they should do. I had a lot of good mentor officers as well, especially in my flying. That's a whole different perspective. But as far as the leadership roles go, you learn from the best. You do learn from the bad ones too. You learn how not to be a leader. Their form of it. And some guys will pick up certain aspects of a leadership role, and and they'll embed that in that part of their character. I've seen guys that were just natural leaders. They were real good people oriented individuals, and and we took the two tenets of Marine Corps leadership, which is always accomplish the mission and take care of your people. That can be a dichotomy sometimes, because depending on what your mission may be, it may be to sacrifice an individual. Ooh, yeah, especially in combat. That was brought to us early on in our careers, that you may have to give the order one day that or may think may happen to an individual, that may be the last time they're ever on this earth.
Oh
That
wow.
was a pretty strong burden to think about, and it shapes your decision making process too, to think about, okay, everything I say and do or ask somebody else to say and do, am I willing to do it myself? And do I understand the consequences of what I'm about to say to them as a leader? Okay. And so you got to open up your perspective of how you relate to people, how you communicate to them, and ultimately what you're being told to accomplish as a leader.
Mm, that's pretty strong. I mean, knowing that you may have to sacrifice a life in order to get the mission done, you know, that's that's something a lot of people couldn't do. You know, that's I mean, and I know it's a somber moment that you have to think about that, but yeah, that's man, that's pretty heavy. You know, um, so
It's instilled in you early on, beginning at officer candidate school as well. I mean, knowing the outcomes and of your decision making process uh, could cost somebody their life. So it's ingrained in you early, and it's reiterated and reminded to you almost on a daily basis too, if you think about it.
yeah, wow, that's pretty strong. What do you miss about the Marine Corps, if you even do?
Uh,
I mean, typically, if you spend 28 years in the Marine Corps, I mean, you're gonna miss it. I would assume.
Yeah, there's a lot I do miss. The moves and stuff like that. Diane and I counted it once after I retired, or as during my right before my retirement ceremony. We had moved 20 times in my career. Uh, that is a strange thing to say, and you don't really realize it, the length of time that is, until you put it on paper and you see every move that you did, and then you start bringing back the memories of them. That's one thing I didn't like about military life, was the constant moving and things, but it was always a new adventure. If you had to look at it in a positive note, you had to think, okay, this is something new I'm going to learn. This is something that's going to advance my career if I continue with this. It's going to make me a better leader and a better officer and a better man along the way. So it depends on how you approach life, and especially in the military, um, knowing full well that your family's going to be ousted. They're coming with you no matter what. They don't have a choice. The kids were used to moving around. I don't think it made a big difference until they got older, uh,
Yeah.
especially right before. Let's see, what was this? My middle son had we. I did what they call a a geographic bachelor. I went to a duty station for a year down in New Orleans while my family stayed in the Atlanta area, because my son was finishing up his senior year in high school. Then
Mm,
he'd already been there 3 years. He was on a wrestling team. Didn't want to disrupt it, and we made the decision to do that, um, for his benefit. And I think it worked out okay. They eventually got down there to New Orleans with me. Uh, probably not good timing because in a month we were evacuated for Hurricane Katrina.
Oh, that was a rough hurricane. Yeah, I get
Yeah,
it. Brian, I have one
we
more
were back.
just real quick.
Okay, because I
So
got a couple
Back.
too.
I know, man. All right. So, Brian and I are big movie buffs. We love movies. Obviously, Maverick and GI Jane. Did you have a really cool nickname, call sign?
Oh, everyone has a call sign. I mean, it's given to you, and it's usually based on something stupid you did. The rest of the squadron members for the Marine Corps, we have a ceremony where you're given your call sign. It's usually what they used to call it a kangaroo court. You had a judge, which they called the Grand Kahuna, and you had
That's
members of
awesome.
the staff that were on the side. It was nothing but fun. It was what it was intended for. But my call sign ended up being Jeb, in honor of Jeb Stuart, the cavalry officer from the Civil War. And the reason being, we were in a briefing one time, and I was briefing the Cobra what we were supposed to do during the operation. And I just said we will be on the flanks, covering the flanks of the infantry unit as they moved in, just like the cavalry did during the Civil War. Well, as soon as I said that, one guy goes, "Who do you think you are, Jeb Stuart?"
That's
And
awesome.
so it just kind of it stuck, and that's what I've been. My call sign is. Uh, if you, I think it's on my LinkedIn page too that I kept it on there
Okay.
because a lot of guys, in case I keep in touch with quite a few former military colleagues and Marines as well, through the LinkedIn and through Facebook and stuff like social media things.
Okay,
That's
so I
awesome.
want to go back to a couple things. So the last question that Donnie asked was, as far as I know, you had to travel and stuff like that. So my question is, did you have to? Uh, were you stationed outside the U.S. And if so, what were those places that you had to be stationed?
First of all, let me give you the idea that the Marine Corps doesn't have a lot of bases. It's a
Okay.
small organization. Okay, it's made up of it's the smallest service. Okay, by design, but it's inside the Department of the Navy, and as Marines jokingly put, it's the men's department. But I'll leave that as it way for my Navy brethren. Um, but no, the Marine Corps only had a few bases outside of the United States. The main ones are Camp Lejeune in North Carolina, Camp Pendleton in California, and then they had a base in Okinawa, Japan. In each of those are the main areas there. There's also a small contingent of Marines on Hawaii. Um, it's still there as well, with aviation, ground side, everything. But the main bases are those in there. Now the Marines, when you're on a staff tour or deployed, you usually board ships, or as we just went through Operation Iraqi Freedom, Enduring Freedom, they were shore based. We've been in a land based war the past 20 years. Okay, so it's guys were deploying to places like that. There we go. It was at Tommy Stewart, Kandahar. Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
That's my dad.
that okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've got a former squadron mate with the XO of the squadron that first went into Kandahar. Came off the Marine ships there, the first Marines that were in Afghanistan in 2001, right after the 9/11. But yeah, they. But as far as us, I was never outside of the United States stationed, but yeah, I've been all over the place. I've been
Oh,
around the world.
okay. And
Pretty
then
awesome.
my other question was, when you first got into the Marines, was it your plan just to go in and be a pilot? Was it, I want to go as high as I can, the top rank? Was that your goal going in, or what was your mindset going into the Marines?
Mindset was just to get through flight school first. I mean
Yeah.
that was the challenge. Yeah, I in my mind I didn't have any vision of where I would be in 5 years or past 5 years. I figured you first commitment. I think even nowadays too. I mean, when these young men sign up and young ladies sign up now, they're pretty much guaranteed they have to stay in almost 10 years because of
Mm.
the way the service contracts are now. When I was in, it was 4.5 years after you got your wings is how long you had to stay. So I was going to be there for at least 6.5 years in the Marine Corps. I had no idea what what I would do after that, or if I would stay in or go on. I was just doing what I was trained to do at the time, and just because your first few years are pretty stable. They don't move you around a lot. You may deploy quite a bit, but you won't be moved around as family wise. But that after that first stint, it was what I did because I had two children and I was getting ready to be deployed again. And I said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and go into the reserves. I there was a reserve squadron in Atlanta, as a matter of fact, where I was born and raised, and they flew Cobras, which was, I mean, it was almost like God giving me the steps of what to do next. And I went ahead and left active duty, went to the reserves for about 3.5 years, I think, in Atlanta, and I decided, you know what, I like the active duty lifestyle. I liked I like the steady money. I like flying a lot, which in the reserves it was kind of hard. It was there to fly, but it was hard to do with a you know a job as well. So most of my time was night flying or on the weekends, which was away from family again. It was just like,
Yeah.
oh wow, you know you're doing the same thing, but it's a different time frame. So what I did next, I went into what they call the active reserve, which is basically going in to support the reserve establishment completely, and you're you're considered on active duty, you're treated like you're active duty, and you're paid like the active duty. So that's what I did my remaining years from about 1992 till I retired in 2010. So it's a lot smaller group of officers in the active reserve program. I believe I don't know what the numbers are now, but when I retired, there was only 33 colonels in the active reserve out of the entire Marine Corps. So I was honored to be able to make it that far, and you know, privileged to be able to fly during that time frame too. Because my even though I retired in 2010, my last duty station, I was still well next to last duty station, I was still flying, but it was a twin engine. It was a Beech King Air at that time, and I went back, you know, from flying helicopters going to twin engine aircraft. So that was a blast too. But well, I wish I could have done it a lot longer, but it moved to the last duty station.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have a couple comments, basically. Mark said you should be proud of everything you and your family did for the people of this country, and he appreciates what you did. Mark is a patriot, big time, and he's a good dude. My dad said, asked the question, what's the weirdest thing that you ever saw while in the military? Let me give you a quick thing on my dad. So he's a conspiracy theorist. He loves Bigfoot and aliens and stuff like that. So uh, he is big on that kind of stuff. That's he's probably looking for something very cool.
Actually, there was never anything really weird. I mean, I had some terrifying moments during the career flying, but nothing really weird. I mean, it was yeah, nah, nothing just pops in my head of
I
weird
got
at
you.
all.
I got you.
I know what he's looking for, but I just never saw anything like that. It was pretty straight.
No
I mean,
UFOs or anything like that.
He said Kandahar Giant. What is the reference there?
Kandahar was actually the first place that the Marine Corps went into in Afghanistan. It was one of the major cities in Afghanistan as well, but it was a stronghold for the Allied groups going in there. You know, the Army, Navy, Air Force, all of them were based out of Kandahar initially.
So did they have people that were big, that were like larger than life, or were they big people like 8 foot tall, or is, I'm not sure what you're asking, Pop. So if you could uh
Expound on the giant part.
yeah, expound on that real quick and stuff. So,
I'm not sure what he's
um,
referring to at all.
what's that?
I'm not. I don't know what he's referring to as giant either. That kind of threw me as well.
Okay, well, hopefully he. So also, Anita said that she's crashed a helicopter in a simulator a few times. That's pretty funny. So,
Yes, I just recently crashed one in a simulator too, not too long ago.
well, Anita, you're in good company. Sounds like. So, all right. So,
I got one if you're thinking there, Donnie.
go right ahead because I was reading one, but go. Yeah, go ahead, Bo.
Okay, so you had just mentioned a few minutes ago, but we didn't really go into it when we were talking about the UFO thing and all that. You said you had some terrifying moments flying. Can you expound on any of those?
Yeah, it's kind of a somber thing, but it's watching people die
Oh wow!
right next to you. It was the first time was this was my first tour, and we were in the off the coast of North Carolina doing a night op. We were it was going to be flying night vision goggles from the ship to shore, go land at an LZ or an airfield. It was basically just an exercise, and we were stationed on the front part of the ship, um, waiting for it to be spotted on the aircraft. Well, we had the troop transport aircraft came in and landed on the spots where we were going to be next, and they loaded up the Marines on their aircraft. Um, the first aircraft landed close to us, which is on the forward part of the ship. Spot 2 is where it is. It's at nighttime. It's kind of a scary place because when you land there, you don't really, and it's nighttime, and you don't have the goggles on at that time. And these were the early days of night vision goggles. They were still the higher ups were still scared of us using night vision goggles, so they weren't allowed to use them until we got airborne, which was crazy. Anyway, the helicopter landed. We're watching them load up. The Marines are coming out of the island to load up into the back of the aircraft. We see them all. They lift the ramps up in the back as they're sitting them down, strapping them in the helicopter. And I knew the two pilots. I didn't know who the two pilots were initially that landed this aircraft, but we saw the LSE, which is a landing signal, enlisted. Basically, the guys that's giving them hand and arm signals when to take off, when to land that thing. He was doing his arms to lift up. The helicopter raised up, and he kind of climbed a little high for uh, almost a ground effect. But anyway, he was real high, and then he gave him the slide over for takeoff. And as he slid over and began his takeoff roll, he never climbed. The aircraft just kind of did a slight descent moving forward, if you can picture that. And he never climbed at all. And
Wow.
all I heard, and we saw him, and the guy that I was flying with that night, we were both yelling, "Pull up, pull up!" No one, well, he couldn't hear us saying that. It was just we knew what was happening, and watched the aircraft dive right into the water. And
Mm.
18 Marines died on that instantaneous. It sunk to the bottom. Helicopters are notorious. Once they enter the water, they go upside down because of they're top heavy. All the engines, the rotor systems on top, so it basically rotates, and it sunk to the bottom. It was only about 40, 50 feet deep. I mean, we're just right off the coast of North Carolina,
Wow.
and it was so. Of course, flight ops were halted there. The rescue boats were in the water already, and they immediately went over to the area. And as the day went on, we found out, 18 Marines died in that helicopter that night. And it was just like the realization that I'm doing a job that I could actually die,
Yeah.
you know, within a few seconds.
Yeah,
It really hit
that's pretty
home.
rough.
It struck me real deep. And then come to find out, the one of those 18 Marines was one of the pilots, and his seat came out of the helicopter when they crashed into the water and went through the plexiglass canopy. The other pilot lived, and he, as he pulled him, he reached out. He said he reached out in front of him and there was no canopy in front of him. So he unstrapped, and as he pushed his way away from the aircraft, he inflated his vest, which we wear life vests on when you're over water doing water ops. But only one side of it inflated, so he kind of corkscrewed up to the top. His eardrums were ruptured because of the depth he was in, and it came up so fast. And he was telling we talked to him quite a bit. I think he ended up he was had a busted knee and a broken arm, uh, but he lived to tell the story about what they were doing, and that was the first one. The second one was on the way to Desert Storm. We were out in the middle of the Pacific, and of course we had to keep up our flight operations going on all the time. And the ship at that time had a Navy flight crew. They have a rescue helicopter that was aboard each aircraft carrier. They still do today. Even back then, for the Marine carriers, they actually had a Huey, a Navy Huey that was back there, and part of their staff that were aviators were the pilots. And so these guys were out. We were doing flight ops, and they were out. Usually, when they would go, they would launch before the first wave of aircraft would go, and they'd sit over in a space over off the left, a couple of miles to the left of the ship or right of the ship or overhead, and they were there for rescue operations. They had a hoist on the aircraft. They had a rescue swimmer, things like that. Well, we were again on the ship doing flight ops, and here over the radio, we hear them calling the aircraft, and nothing's there. Nobody's answering. They were just talking to them just a couple of seconds before, and now that there's no radio contact. We'll come to find out they had crashed over there and off to the side of the ship, and there was 3 guys or 4 guys above on board that thing, and none of them they never found the aircraft, never found the bodies. So,
Wow.
I mean, we're in deep Pacific water, so it probably sunk pretty fast with them inside, I would imagine, is the reason they
and just
never
crushed.
found anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they think just got disoriented because they weren't wearing goggles. This was probably I don't think the Navy was big into that at the time. Nowadays, everybody and their brother wears them things. It's like once you put those things on and you get out at nighttime and you go, why in the world would you not even wear these things when you're flying at nighttime? Because it opens up. I mean, it's not like flying in the daylight because it gives you a restricted field of view, about 40 degrees. So you have to move your head around quite a bit to see everything, but it gives you that spatial orientation that you need and for flying instead of just complete darkness. Because those lights you see on the front of aircraft, they don't go out that far, and your eyes can't pick up that distance anyway. They don't see enough detail. But the goggles give you that night vision that you need, and it's a safety factor that's increased. It's probably kept a lot of guys from dying.
Yeah.
Wow.
Let me ask you this, Jeff. So we're going to segue into that, like technology. How do you think that the advancement in technology has changed the way the military operates?
Oh, exceedingly. Um,
Yeah.
when I look back at the technology that we had back in when I first came in, I mean, it was still using Vietnam tactics and stuff like that, and the aircraft themselves were, I mean, still using slightly improved uh, avionics and electronics for weapon systems. But you look at them nowadays, I mean, it's unbelievable. Look at what the drones are doing now. I mean, that to me is absolutely amazing. How they've used them. They not only utilize them as observation, intelligence gathering. Now they use them as weapons.
Hmm.
So if you watch some, I don't know if you guys watch that. What is it, Funker 530 or something like? There's a website out there that shows actual combat footage, and they're posting them all the time. The Ukrainians and the Russians out there, how they're using them. So
Wow.
Yeah.
it's an amazing technology. I mean, the weapon systems they've got nowadays are so automated. Even the Navy ships, you probably don't even. A lot of people probably don't even realize what the weapon systems they have on the ships is. I don't. They call it the R2D2 because that's basically what it looks like. The Star Wars little thing is in the shape,
Yeah.
but it's got a 20 millimeter Gatling gun on the thing. It's automatic radar guided. So any kind of missiles or aircraft that are coming into the ship, it shoots them down. It also has its own missile systems built into it to protect the ships. And so a lot of that stuff, I mean, it's been around for a while now, but it's become so automated now that they very seldom use a lot of people for self defense. It ain't the World War II where you see the guys on their 5-inch guns and the 20 millimeters and 25 millimeter guns shooting off the side of a ship anymore. They don't even do that.
That sounds like a lot
But
of fun.
the
Brian is
other
a
the
big he's a big drone geek.
Yes,
He's
I
got
am.
he's got a big drone, couple of small drones, I think.
Yeah, that's my fascination with flying and the FAA and all that good stuff. That's why I find all that fascinating.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've got my UAS license as well. You're able to get that now. If you've got a commercial pilot rating, you can get a UAS license just by taking the test. So
Yeah, the
I've
107.
got a couple. I've got a couple of small drones myself, but
Oh,
I'm not
okay.
using them yet. I would love to go into doing something with aviation photography with them later on, but I'll pursue that probably once I stop completely flying. I guess I might try that.
Yeah, whenever you do, let me know. We can get together on that.
All right, sounds good.
um,
Yeah.
Yeah, the other
got
technology of the aircraft nowadays. I mean, if you've seen the F-35 pilot's helmet yet?
I've
I
not.
don't think I have.
All right, there's some YouTube videos out there. You need to go look that up. These
Okay.
guys have got so much
F-35.
information. The F-35 helmet. It's got the whole helmet system's got so much information passed to the guy. He never has to look inside the cockpit. He just moves his
Oh wow.
eyeballs around and he gathers all kinds of information, and then you can flip to different information that he can see right through his goggles right there. I mean, the face mask is covering his eyes, and it's an amazing piece of gear, and
It's like
it's
a heads up
fascinating how
display
far
for a car, basically.
it, on steroids.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Um, so Brian, you have one?
No, I was waiting on you. Go ahead. I'm
Okay.
being patient. Go ahead.
No, which is fine. So, did the Marines ever go woke? You know, like how the military has just done the most ridiculous stuff I think on like ever. But were they made to go woke?
My time in, was not. It was a lot of. I don't know if you guys ever remember the tailhook convention that used to go happen out in Las Vegas years and years and years ago. Well, they had a big stink out there with female pilots, and the whole world changed as far as uh, sexual harassment, things like that. That was the big thing back in the '90s when that came up. But as far as the woke stuff, that what they're experiencing now, I can't speak to it because
Okay.
I have information that probably would say, mm-hmm. But as far as personal experience, no, it wasn't. It
Okay.
was never as bad as it is now.
Yeah. I mean, you see the. I'm not even sure what that thing is. That is the whatever that thing is that wears that uniform in Biden's. I don't know what that is. What position does he slash she slash it hold?
I'm not sure what pronouns it uses, but it. I don't think it's a surgeon general, but it's got something to do higher. It's medical. It's in the medical field for something, but I don't. I'm not
Head of
positive
the
it's a. But I know who
health
you're talking about.
organization. Health. I think it's human the HOA or whatever it is. Human Health
HHS.
Organization.
Yeah.
Could be. Yeah, could be. So it was a guy, and then it starts wearing a skirt and everything else. So it just I don't know. That's what I was kind of getting at. Basically, it's just that's a whole nother podcast. Let me tell you right now. Brian hates
That's
when
a
I get
conversation.
political and stuff.
Yeah.
It's a never-ending conversation, is what it is.
Yeah, I think so.
Unfortunately,
It is. What you got, Brian? Go ahead.
And I think Donnie may have already asked this or whatever, but what is your we've talked about the military and all that. What is Donnie, did you ask about what your favorite part about being in the military? And I have a second part to that. What's your favorite part of flying? If you could answer both of those.
Yeah, the favorite part of the military flying was the if you've ever, you know, you see an aircraft fly in twos, they call it formation flying, stuff like that. But have you ever been in a formation of flying with 16 aircraft right beside you? That that to me was a inspirational thing to watch. Even we would do it for show sometimes. Just line the aircraft all up like we were coming back from a deployment or something like that. We wanted to do some showing off to the families as we came back home. So you'd line up 16 aircraft right in a row and just do a break over the runway to come in to land. It was an absolutely amazing sight to watch the whole thing. The other one was the large formations of tactical operations that we did with different models of aircraft, including fixed wing, uh, doing an operation and watching that whole, starting from a concept to a brief to execution and to a debrief about what we did right and what we did wrong. What else can we do better next time? And watching those massive amounts of aircraft accomplishing a mission, focusing on that, and coming back safely with everybody and learning from it. That was an amazing act to watch. And it's a lot of things that the I don't think the civilian world really understands uh, with military operations, how big and large they can be, and the coordination that's required to make it happen. Not just the guys in the cockpit, but the people coordinating it on the ground, the higher ups, and the planners that do it all, that help you institute all the actions. Because every mission has got a submission, and each aircraft's got its own mission. Each group of aircraft has their own mission. It's an amazing feat to watch, and I do miss that massive coordination that I was able to witness and participate in.
Yeah, that's awesome.
The fun, best part about flying so far, I mean, it never ceases to amaze me because, and I'll get a little personal here, looking at God's creation from a different perspective. I mean, we get here on the ground. It's you see the amazement. You've been to the Grand Canyon. You've seen the Rocky Mountains. You've seen the Gulf of Mexico. Maybe you've even seen the Alps or Australia or something like that, and you see the beauty of God's creation. But when you get that different perspective, when your feet are off the ground, whether it's at 1,000 feet or you're at 25,000 feet, 30,000 feet, it's a whole different look. And you just look at the grandeur of it all. And I sit there and I question these people that think we started with a big bang theory, and we developed from microbes to monkeys. I
Hmm.
said, there is no way you can look at this and say this happened by chance.
That's
There
right.
is no way.
Better believe it.
That,
Better believe
and
it.
to me, that's my favorite part about flying. Every time I get off the ground, I just look at the grandeur, whether it's a sunrise, a sunset, a rainbow in the sky, the cloud formations, or flying through the clouds, putting my hand out the window and just feeling the moisture of the cloud as I fly through it. Absolutely amazing.
Man,
Okay. I
that's
got a
awesome.
question because my mind is totally going. This has to do with a movie I saw with a helicopter. And have you ever seen San Andreas?
Oh yeah, with the Rock.
The
The
Rock.
Rock. Yeah.
Okay, so he has at the beginning of it, he has a moment where they're going down into a canyon to actually um, save somebody, and they kind of have to maneuver the helicopter in. And he says he makes a comment. We're fixing to tip the hat or something like that. Is that an actual phrase where he kind of goes down into the uh, like I guess going from one ridge down in between two I guess mountains or something like that. I mean, is that a phrase that is an actual phrase, or is that something they come up with? Tipping the hat, well, basically, is to get the blades up underneath this ridge here. Is that a such thing, or is that something maybe that they just
Hollywood.
put?
No,
Yeah, Hollywood.
that 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 sounds Hollywood to me, and that's putting your life in jeopardy when you're trying to do something like that. Anyway, I
Yeah.
don't I don't see the. I'd have to go back and look at the movie to see what. part he was talking about, or the scene he was trying to do, why he was flying, needed to put his rotors up underneath the
Yeah,
ridge
it's
line in the
because it
first place.
was a car was basically on the side of a mountain or something, and he had to get down into like a little valley, and he had to basically tip it to the blades to get under this ridge, I guess. And he called tipping the hat, and I didn't know if that was an actual real statement or a real term or what. So
Heard that one
That's
before.
awesome.
okay.
Jeff, let me ask you this, man. How did you navigate your faith, your job? Because I know that every foxhole, has a Christian. You know what I'm saying? Every foxhole has a prayer, basically. And that might not be the right way to say it, because, you know, I mean, but I know that you've been a Christian for a long time, and I'm assuming you as a kid, because then you said that your parents had you in church like all the time, right?
In the womb. Yeah, I was in the church in the womb.
Yeah, exactly. So how did you balance that? Because I know that you know obviously we're called to as Christians we are called to bring people to Christ, and I mean sometimes it seems like it'd be easier if you're in a tough situation, but you sometimes can't wait until that point. So how did you navigate that as one as a leader and two as somebody who was a Christian but you were in tough spots?
I understand what you're trying to say there. My Christianity never went away as a young officer as well. Uh, Sometimes it was stronger than others. I had my weak moments and stupid decisions I made too that I shouldn't
You
have.
do.
But it's part of the learning process that God puts us through. It's like our Bible school lesson the other day about making choices and stuff like that. So, but the Christianity never left. It's always been there. Um, it was what guided me. To me, I had never a fear of death either, because I knew where I was going, and I tried to
Right.
convey that several times to some other officers that talked to me about it, because they said, Jeff, you're so calm all the time. You don't spool up, you don't yell, you don't scream. It's just a different leadership style. I said, well, I've got a peace within me, and I understand that the decisions I may make mistakes. I understand that, and but the ultimate sacrifice that I have to make, I'm not worried about it. If I'm going to die in combat or in an accident in training, it's I feel I set it up for my family, so nothing is major going to happen to them. They're going to be taken care of, but I'm not
Right.
worried about my soul and where I'm going. And
Right.
conveying that to other people, and sometimes it would sink into them, and others would just go, "Oh, okay," and just move on. Um, it's not something that they were interested in. It was not often, but I'll tell you where it did come into play was going to war. You watch, like you said, the saying goes, there are no atheists in foxholes. You
That's what
know,
I was trying to say. There we go. Yep.
yeah.
That's what I was trying to say.
Uh, once the idea we're on our way to war, and guys start thinking about it's okay. This may be the last time I'm on Earth. And I just left my family. Am I prepared for what the future may hold? And I saw, uh, and some of these guys still maintain their Christianity even after they converted there on the ship on moving across. We had a men's Bible study that we started, and uh, got several guys going to it, and they're still strong Christians to this day. But it was a
That
small
was going to
group.
be my next
You know,
question: is if you had stuff like that on the ship.
there was our attitudes that we'll serve our country to the best of our ability, and if we don't make it back home, we're at peace with that because we know we're going to be with the Lord. Some guys thought it was like a license to do anything that they wanted to, because hey, I might die, I'm going to live it up, and not, not concerned about the other side of death. That was to them. I guess that was just it. Unfortunately, and I don't know if their lives changed later on or what. Some of them I didn't keep up with, obviously. The others that became Christian, I'm still in touch with several of them actually. So, and their
That's
faith has
awesome.
continued throughout the years.
That's
So
great.
I've got one. My last two questions, I'll just put them together. That way you can just answer them. And that'll be mine. Then I'll back off for a minute. So my one question is, when every time you got into a helicopter or whatever flight you was fixing to take, did you have a ritual or a so-called good luck charm that you toted with you, or something that you put up in the window, kind of to some kind of ritual that you did? And my second question was, what's your favorite Bible verse?
Hmm. Um, no, there was you see a lot of these old war movies and talk about the guys putting a picture of their wife or their kids on on the panel before they go take off on a flight or something like that. No, I never had anything like that. I didn't have any good luck charms or anything like that. It was just a concentration level that you would build up to yourself, focusing, and we call it keeping everything compartmentalized. You once you put strapped on that aircraft, the rest of the world didn't matter anymore. It was what you had to do at the moment to bring that aircraft safely back, and also the people that you were carrying, bringing them safely back too. Because in the military, nobody flies solo. It's always you've got somebody else with you, or you're carrying a bunch of passengers. So or soldiers, Marines, whoever's in the back, depending on the type of aircraft you fly. So your focus becomes that and that only. Now there are during the flying and stuff like that, there are always bantering over the radios and comedic lines that were from movies that are always put out there as well too. So I mean, it wasn't all serious business continuously, but we understood the seriousness of it, even though and humor helped get you through a lot of it as well. I'll give you one example. This still sticks in my head from the night we did this operate. We were doing a training operation, and we were doing night vision goggle shooting with rockets in the 20 millimeter, and we were over on the range, and we were shooting at these old Connex boxes that were set up to look like a city. Okay, you could actually they were look like 2-story buildings, and they were set up so they had streets going through them. And anyway, the guy that was my dash two. We had 2 aircraft. I think there were like 3 or 4 others that were there, but he was with me. And so I'm in the aircraft, and I have my buddy that's flying with me, and my other good friend was in the other aircraft. We were rolling in on the target, and some of the terminology used is that lead is rolling in hot. Well, that means I'm going weapons. Weapons are getting armed, and I'm getting ready to shoot. And so I fire off my rounds, and I start pulling off. And while you're pulling off, you're turning off all the armament switches so you don't shoot in the civilian world out off to the side. And I hear my buddy rolling. He said, "Dash two's rolling in hot," and he goes, "Freeze, gopher!" Like from the movie Caddyshack, and he said it loudly over the radio, so everybody heard it. And when we got back into the debrief, everybody was laughing so hard at what he had done. For just that brief second, we brought humor into it, and he was notorious for that too. He was a hilarious guy, loved him like a brother, um, and he was, it was just one of those spur of the moment things that popped up. The seriousness was kind of just okay, yeah, we're still having fun. We're getting paid to do this. Look at what we're doing. We're shooting weapons in a helicopter. Can you believe where they allow us to do this? That was kind of like
Fun stuff.
that yeah, that humor moment for the seriousness of what it was. Now, what was that
That's
second
great.
part of your question?
Second part was, what's your favorite Bible verse?
Oh, Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens
Awesome.
me. I used to I
Nice.
used to say that one a lot while I was running for 6 miles. You ought to try that one.
Woo. Goodness
I can
gracious.
imagine.
So I'm gonna wrap it up here, Jeff, with really a statement, and basically um, it's important that civilians understand the sacrifice that you guys uh, go through, your families, uh, your wife, your kids, your parents. It's very important that they understand what you guys do. That it isn't just your sacrifice; it's your wife, your kids. It's their sacrifice as well. And Brian and I, we're just so appreciative of you guys that do that and go through that, and the respect factor that we have for you is is immense. And you know, and it's not. I mean, it's secondary to me respecting you as a Christian brother. But we appreciate everything that you have done for your country and your compadres and everybody that makes that sacrifice, that's a choice to go into the military. And your brothers banter, we definitely appreciate you guys, and thank you very much
Absolutely.
for doing what you do, and definitely thank you for tonight. And it was a pleasure, it was an honor to have you on, and it's an honor to have you as a friend and a brother in Christ. I can assure you that from the bottom of my heart, that's 100% right there, my friend.
I appreciate you both having me tonight. And, you know, I look back on my entire career and I think when I first came in, it was the love of country wasn't, I don't think was there yet. You don't really, I don't, I'm trying to remember back when that love of country and patriotism really took off in my life. And it had to have been somewhere around when I was promoted to major or lieutenant colonel because I saw Um, I'd already experienced a lot of movement in our lives as far as family changes, things like that. But as you get older and more mature, I think you understand what those words of your oath of office are. Where you swear to an idea, not a country, not a king, not a president, not a Congress, not anything like that, but an idea called Constitution. And
Mhm.
I used to tell people, I said, have you ever read the thing? Really read it? I mean, it takes you about 30 minutes to read it.
It does.
You can order the booklet. You can order a free booklet from like Hillsdale College or the Heritage
I've
Foundation or
got it.
something like that.
Yep,
Yeah,
I've got it.
and
From Hillsdale. Yep.
read it, read it, and
I
understand that
believe it.
what guys are raising their right hand to and swearing an oath to, officer or enlisted nowadays. You need to understand what you're saying. Here's a blank check, and it's Jeff Holder. I'm giving it to you
Yep.
for good, for better, or for worse. And that sacrifice was really didn't sink in until later on in my career. I mean, my life is much better for it. I understand this country much better. I know what it should be and could be, and not necessarily trusting in one individual to do it or a group of individuals to do it, but I'm trusting that God will take us to a better country, back to what I think He wants us to do. And if people will turn back to God, I think that will happen.
That's
And
right.
Amen.
that service to this country that I gave for 28 years, it was it really wasn't a burden. It was an honor and a privilege to wear the uniform and look back on the men and women that I served with, the men and women that were in the past that wore the title Marine. Man alive, I don't feel like I earned it, even though I spent 28 years doing it. The history of the Marine Corps is um, it's an unbelievable story, and I wish I had time to tell you about it, but it's in the books if you want to look it up, and you can look it up on Wikipedia. It'll get you through in a quick thing. But um, I want to thank you guys for letting me come on and tell a little bit of my life story, and I hope I
Well, we would love to have you back. I can assure you that to talk about some more stuff and you know I'm in awe of you as a man, as a Christian, and as a man that served his country. And that's a straight shoot. I promise you that. I'm very honored to know you, and thank you very much again, Jeff.
Okay. With that
Both
being
for
said,
having me, and Semper Fi.
there you
Yes,
go.
do or die, right? Is that what they say? All
With
right.
that being said, my name is Brian.
My name's Donnie, and Jeff. Thanks again. Peace out.
Peace.